Wish you happy Diwali first of all.
Happy Diwali to everyone, sir. Everyone present here, everyone who is joining us. So.
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, said Benjamin Franklin. A very good evening to one and all present, respected dignitaries and participants. On behalf of School of Law, SRM IST, I, Suraj TN, student of 3rd BCom LLB Honors, welcome you all to the national webinar on National Education Policy 2020 and its implications on legal education. No matter how the times are, our quest for knowledge should not be impeded. In furtherance to this belief, we find immense joy in conducting this webinar on a very important topic. As a good practice, I request you all to raise for the Tamil Thai Valthu.
சீராரும் மதனமென திகழ்வரத கண்டமிதில் தெக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை முதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம்பியந்து செய்ய மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே.
At the outset, we would like to inform our attendees that we will be having an interactive session after our esteemed resource persons have spoken. Therefore, I request our attendees to feel free to type and send their questions through the question and answer box. Our esteemed resource persons will answer the questions during the interactive session. I would now like to introduce the gathering to Professor Dr. V.R. Dinkar sir, Professor, School of Law, SRM IST. Dr. Dinkar sir has over 20 years of experience in the field of academics, and he has worked at several law colleges across South India. Sir is a former professor of law and dean of NMI-MS University. Sir is known for his active research and for publishing 2 reference books, one on scientific expert evidence, determining probative value and admissibility in the courtroom, and the other on evidential facets of forensic DNA fingerprinting. Sir's work in forensic and scientific law is regarded to be the finest of its kind. It will be fitting only if a man of his stature welcomes the gathering. Therefore, I request Professor Dr. V.R. Dinkar sir to welcome the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Suresh, for introducing me. So very good evening to one and all present here. In this fine evening, we have dignitaries who are distinguished academics and vice chancellors from top universities in India to discuss on a very significant topic, National Education Policy 2020 and its implication on legal education. Being a welcome speaker, I don't have any plan to enter into the nuances of the topic, mainly due to the time constraint and the presence of personalities who are highly expertise. However, I would like to place before this respected panel 2 major concerns from the side of a common man who may not be able to understand the pros and cons of the newly announced education policy. The first one is that India, being the second most populous country in the world, and as per the current statistics, around 27% of Indians is coming under below poverty line, and more than 50% are in middle class. The parents coming under this category may not be in a position to send their child to the top institutions like MIT, Stanford, or Cambridge. Therefore, can we reach any conclusion that our new education policy would help us in imparting a world-class education to these poor and middle-class people? And the second one is always a disturbing fact for us, especially for the educators and policymakers, especially with regard to the world ranking. This time also we missed the boat. We couldn't get entry into the first 100 when the universities at Singapore and Malaysia got placed in the list. The query I would like to pose to the respectable panelists is that can we improve our position with the help of this new policy? Assuming that our experts will definitely include the aforesaid propositions in their deliberations, straight away I am entering into my duty. It is a matter of great honor and pleasure for me to welcome our dignitaries. First, I would like to welcome our Honorable Pro Chancellor, Dr. P. Satyanarayan. He is always with us. Recently, for our induction program, he had delivered a very informative and thought-provoking speech. Sir, on behalf of the Faculty of Law, SRM IST, and on my personal behalf, I heartily welcome you to our program. Next, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, SRM University, Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti. Sir, on behalf of Faculty of Law, SRM IST, I sincerely welcome you to our program. I also welcome our Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. R. Balasubramanian, to our program. Sir, warm welcome to our program. I am also very happy to welcome Professor Dr. N.K. Jayakumar, former Vice Chancellor, NUALS Kochi, and present advisor to the Chief Minister of Kerala. Sir, I warmly welcome you to our program. Next, I welcome Professor Dr. T.S.N. Shastri, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tamil Nadu, Dr. Ambedkar Law University, Chennai. Sir, we are very glad to see you here and heartily welcome you to this program. I next welcome Professor Dr. Surya Prakash, Honorable Vice Chancellor, DSNLU, Visakhapatnam. Sir, I sincerely welcome you to our program. Next, I welcome Professor Dr. C.A. Gurudutt, Dean School of Law, SRM IST. In fact, without his initiative, we may not be able to join here for a beautiful program like this. Sir, I welcome you to this program. Last but not least, I also welcome the deans, directors, faculty members, and students of our School of Law, SRM University, and other institutions. And finally, I wish the program a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your valuable words, sir. Now it is the time for the keynote address, which is going to be delivered by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, sir. It is indeed an honor to have sir with us this evening, as he has set very high standards in the field of academics. I now call upon Ms. Anvita to introduce and invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir.
Overwhelmed with joy and pride, I feel honored to introduce and welcome Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, Vice Chancellor of SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, who is also known as Institution Builder, holds a PhD from Queen's University of Belfast, UK, after obtaining a BTech from Regional Engineering College, Warangal, and MSc from Delhi College of Engineering in 1982 and 1985 respectively. Professor is a teacher by choice, and his choice have made him what he is today. His career spans up to 34 years. Prior to this, he was the president of Manipal University, Jaipur, director of NIT Delhi and Karnataka, director in charge of NIT Tiruchirappalli, Calcutta and Delhi, mentor director at NIT Goa, Puducherry and Sikkim, chairman of Central Counseling Board 2011, and president of Association of Indian Universities, New Delhi. The range of positions he has held and experience he has gained has left him with a bevy of ideas. Sir has been the recipient of the Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship by the ACU, the SCRC Fellowship by DST Government of India, the UKSTF Award by the British Council, and more. He has also published more than 75 research papers in several national and international journals and conferences. He insists that there should be an approach that is student-centric, where the students should be allowed to design their own degree, tailor their own combination as per their liking, and not have to worry about the branch. He calls this branchless engineering. We feel so blessed to have your presence this evening, sir. Once again, I bid a very warm welcome, and we are eager to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anvita, for this nice introduction. Thank you, Suraj, for setting the tone. Very distinguished experts, guests, my dear faculty members, and all my students who are present here, all those who are attending. I'm really overwhelmed by the response I'm seeing. More than 410 people are currently joining us for this particular webinar on Diwali Eve. I think this is a great success, and there is a great excitement about the theme which we have chosen, that is about the National Education Policy 2020 and its implications in legal education. I also take this opportunity to welcome the distinguished guests. Of course, some of them I have met only today for the first time, Professor N.K. Jayakumar Saab, and also Professor S. Surya Prakash ji. But I'm also delighted that my good friend Professor T.S. Shastri Saab is also here. Various other luminaries have joined us for this particular event, including my team members, Professor Gurudutt and Professor Dinkar. And once again, a warm welcome to everyone. Friends, I'm going to set the tone. I've been given an opening slot here, and therefore I'll talk general about the National Education Policy. We also call it alternatively New Education Policy. So please allow me to share my presentation to you. I'll not take much of the things from the presentation. I'll share a few points. The time given to me is around 10-12 minutes. I'll try to maintain it within the limitations of what I want to discuss. And I would generally say that the new education policy is a catalyst for change and development. I don't find much of, you can say, void or gaps in this particular policy. And therefore, I'm saying it's a catalyst for change and development. In any case, this policy has come to us much after many failed attempts. And some of them were probably very well known in terms of what we call Yashpal Committee or TSR Subramaniam Committee or Hari Gautam Committee. There were something like 5 committees which were there. But their efforts didn't see the light of the day. Fortunately for us, Professor Kasturi Rangan's, Dr. Kasturi Ranganji's team and his efforts fructified in form of an NEP. The reasons why NEP was required are probably enumerated here, that we are working in a very fragmented educational ecosystem, very limited access, though access was improving. Institutional autonomies were a big question. We were not very research driven or research led. And of course, governance was always a question. Ask any vice chancellor, trigger him in any conference, what are your challenges? And all of us will immediately be kind of going into the governance issues which were there. Of course, regulatory issues were also there. And the other problem was the large affiliating universities. These are not my, you can say, findings, my dear friends. These are as it is listed in the new education policy, that why the policy has come into being. And therefore, just for the completeness, I'm trying to share it with you. If I try to give some general comments about the policy, in my opinion, I would say that this policy is a policy which is very big, a dreamy policy, a policy which is envisaging many things to happen. And therefore, I call this policy which is having a focus on reform, but potential to transform, which is important, that unless the transformation happens, nothing much would come out of the whole thing. And that is what is there in this particular policy. The best part of the policy framing is that it was a very consultative process, which has been highlighted here, that more than 2 lakh inputs were available to them even after the draft was given. Much before the draft, many things happened for a year and a half. But even after the draft was given, 2 lakh inputs were given, and I myself gave many inputs, which is something very good about this policy. So it's a consulted, properly consulted policy. It is envisaging big things because it is foreseeing that 10,000 institutions will get the power of degree awarding. Remember, currently we are less than 800, 900 universities in the country who are giving degrees. Some of them are new. Otherwise, we have 1,000 universities which are there. And therefore, to get 10,000 in next 15 years will be a big challenge. Remember, in 73 years, we have achieved only 800, 900, and another 15 years would be another what you call 9,000 plus. So it's going to be a big challenge. NEP will obviously drive us for next 15, 20 years. That's my expectation. It's covering almost all aspects seamlessly from KG to PG, which is nice, but I'm not commenting on anything in terms of school education. Regulatory framework, there is a slide where I'll be sharing something. But the best part is that the policy is continuing the 5 pillars of access, equity, quality, accountability, and transparency. Many things are focusing on these things directly or indirectly or a combination of that. But my own expectation with the openness in this policy is that this new framework will bring what you call speed, efficiency, and diversity, which in my opinion, in Indian education was not so high. Diversity, I'm saying, because an IIT will be only engineering, a law university will be only law, or maybe a medical will be only medical. In that sense, I'm saying diversity. Speed and efficiency are required in any system if you want to be fast tracking what you want to do. And these are the general comments. If I continue more on that, I think there is a new term called Education 4.0, which is going to come into light because of more autonomy. And this autonomy mostly is going to be the student centricity. Education 4.0 is student centric education. Also, it will become multidisciplinary education, which is going to there. The time and the speed and with which you can do 3-year program can become 4-year, and 4-year program can become 3-year. I think there are provisions. Till now, most of you might be knowing that 3-year program, BA, BSc, BCom can become 4-year. But I would probably say that it can become 4-year program can also become 3-year. And I'll, in the end, in my last slide, I'll explain that particular scheme, which is there. Respect for online, ODL, virtual, etc. is going to be there. Infusion of technology, and therefore there is a framework called NETF, which is going to come into picture. Lot of relief for the young students to not to close their tracks when they are appearing for JEE or NLU test or CLAT or whatever that may be. Single entry examination probably will benefit based on your performance. You can choose where you want to go and how would you like to progress in your life. Of course, there are things on internationalizations and teacher training. I'll not be touching upon them in the limited period of time available to me. Some of the key initiatives, in my opinion, would be that investing a lot of money, which was needed. I hope this focus or this reiteration of 6% of GDP for budget will be in reality will happen, but we'll also have to develop the capacity to use it, particularly in government. Since I have worked in government for 29 years, I can say at times we are unable to use the budget adequately. At times it's given too late to us, and therefore we have to develop all that capacity, and hopefully research will also be seeded with this kind of an investment. 50% of GER is again a huge task, like 10,000 giving degree. This 26.3% is the figure quoted in the policy, which has been achieved in 73 years. And now we want another 23% coming in next 15 years. I think this is going to be a big challenge, but technology is going to play a big role in expanding this. And hopefully that will also happen. Regulatory body will be a singular one, HECI, as we know here. I'll be putting a slide on this next, maybe after 1 or 2 slides. And there will be a new regulatory structure with 4 bodies, and all sorts of general bodies will get amalgamated as far as the education is concerned. And of course, some respect for the non-government institutions. Many of us belong to that, the self-finance institution. Vocational and the skill-based degrees and other things will also come into the mainframe, and they'll be treated at par, and so forth. And of course, there'll be an augmentation of scholarship as well as the accreditation system for the higher education. These are all the plans. Obviously, you are seeing the policies which will come. I am also working on 1 or 2 policies here, particularly one related to blending of learning, which will be supported by NETF, and another one which is the student centricity, which is called as the ABC. I'll explain you that one later. So under the new regulatory framework, you will probably have 4 more bodies called NHERC, NAC, HEGC, and GEC, and their roles are defined. I only hope that these will not have too much of overlap and difficulty in functioning, which was the case in the previous 17 councils which we had. Except for BCI and MCI, everyone has been amalgamated here. However, they will continue to do their professional works. Bodies are not going to vanish, but they will not play the same role as they were playing in the education sector, and that is a change which we have. But otherwise, they'll be important. COA or BCI or ICAR or NCVT, everything will remain. Similarly, what were the real catalysts? Why you can call this policy as a catalyst for change and development? My main thing is it is helpful for continuous education from 20 to 80. Mostly you will have a work life today, and therefore you can say continuous education will be required because knowledge is also changing very, very fast, and therefore we need continuous education. No age bar, entry, exit anytime. Acceptability of multiple modes, all those distance, online, flexible, whatever you can say, virtual, contact, physical, offline, everything will be a mixed mode. You can choose one course like this, second course like this, third course like that. Like you do when you eat food, what way you choose your things. When you wear clothes, you choose something. Same thing possibly will be given in education in terms of a lot of flexibility. And then of course, education from multiple institutions will be permitted. Skill and vocational, I have already said, and use of technology also I have said. So what are the transformations which a student would require? In the interest of time, I'm probably going fast. These are the 5 interests a student can seek. If I were a student of today's generation, if I was 18, 20 years old, I would have certainly demanded these. I will pick my teachers and timings. I will frame my courses to at least some courses which I want to study because my heart or my mind says that this is what I need to know. Design my own degrees. I am not necessarily to be bound in the conventional degrees, and that's why it's student centricity. Study through any mode. I have already explained you, and that's a real world. And of course, learning or exams on demand. When I'm ready, I should be given that and I should be allowed that. I think this is the kind of transformation which we want. And can this NEP deliver that? I think my answer is yes right now. And student centricity rather than institutional or teacher centricity. Neither me nor Professor Shastri will be able to decide everything, or nor would be the BCI decide everything. A student will also decide everything. And for that, there'll be a new framework called Academic Bank of Credit, and that will give you anytime, anywhere, many other features, any mode, any language, any speed, everything will be given here. Multiple entry, multiple exit has become very famous, but it's an offshoot of ABC only, that you can get out anytime and get in anywhere because you are given the flexibility. Active promotion of mother tongue and other languages is a very good thing. Promotion of arts and humanities, which probably were subdued in my opinion, is also coming back by way of policy framework. And then of course, I gave you an example of exams on reform, exam reforms like open book, exams on demand, group examination. Rather than sitting in, rather than writing examination, you will give a speaking examination. Rather than sitting in examination, you will be standing in examination. So everything will be a sea change which can come. And of course, support for mature or adult learners, which will be there. That is what I meant when I said 80 years. So friends, my dear friends, I'm coming to possibly last 1 or 2 slides from my side. And this is a slide which is defining what we call student centricity, or ABC, or the building blocks of ABC, if I can say so. You can probably understand with the yellow block on the top left is any subject combinations, always there. And of course, there, but we are not offering it to large number of students. Merging of modes, we were not liking many times distance or online or virtual modes, but it will happen now. We wanted lifelong learning or delivering ability of learnability to all, but now it will be much more. We'll now allow you, the national or international institutions, seamlessly, and large number of students from SRM go outside under Students Abroad program for that. But now after this policy, we have also coined what we call a Students Abroad program in a very, very different way, where 3+1 or 4+1 or 3.5 and 1.5, all those kind of schemes with very valued partners is going to come. So even if you go for 1 year or half a year, you gain a lot of experience by going outside to the outside world. So that will happen. Convert credits into degrees and diplomas. So you will not get at the end any degree or diploma from us unless you want to convert it. You will get only credit. So credit will be the new currency which will be there. And suppose you mix up your scheme in such a complex fashion that you've taken 3 courses from science, 3 from law, 3 from arts, 3 from engineering, 3 from public health, or whatever that may be, hotel management, and suddenly you find that you are not able to get a specialized degree of law or engineering or tech or whatever may be. In that case, you will be given, or you can be given, Bachelor of Liberal Education. These are kind of provisions we are trying to make. There are many more provisions. I have not explained everything, but this is going to be in the hands of the students. Of course, the institution will also decide certain aspects that how to operate and deliver this particular thing. So with this, you'll probably find that the new education policy is going to deliver a new excitement. It will be a catalyst for the students to learn something. And just see the blocks which I have given. With the first one, the notion of specializations will be gone. As was being said in my introduction, I want branchless engineering. Same way, there can be many other things branchless, at least at the undergraduate level. Flexible education, everything will become flexible in terms of any time, any speed, any mode, any language, various things. So it will become flexible. You can do a degree in 4 years or 3 years. Engineering degree can be done in 3 years, provided the ABC, as we have proposed some regulations to UGC for the same. If it comes into force, you can possibly be on a fast track if you're a fast learner. A slow learner can very happily do in 7-8 years if they like, without much of ado. No one can say that you failed for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. You decided your pace and you studied accordingly, and therefore you did your engineering according to that. Notion of physical campus will go away, that I'm studying in this campus or residential campus. You will go as you please. Notion of currency is also gone, and notion of branches and specializations or types of degrees is also going to change. We know Bachelor of Liberal Arts is there, but no other liberal degree was on offer. So we'll possibly offer that. So I think these are some of the things, friends, which probably would excite me as a vice chancellor or as a faculty, that what NEP has brought on table. And now I'll come to the conclusion. I think I'm running out of my time. Number one, you can say that education has been slow moving entity in terms of quality and other things, and therefore NEP will make the changes faster. Similarly, empowerment of all stakeholders through autonomy is important. A new scheme like ABC will empower the students. Till now, students were not empowered. If you come to me for admission, I will say, this is the program, these are the seats, and this is the curriculum. If you want to study, come in SRM, otherwise you may not come. We don't want that. Anyone is welcome now, even if you want to do few odd courses from outside. Hopefully this scheme will be applicable from the next year admissions, because policy framework has to be approved by the regulatory bodies right now. Of course, adoption of technology was very, very poor. We resisted that. We always said we want eye contact and this and that. It's fine, but COVID has changed, and we should now ensure that once the technology is coming, we make a right use of technology. I'm not saying 100%, I'm not saying 50% also, but wherever needed, at times technology can be a boon, because I don't have to draw big things without proper dimensions and accuracy. I can project it and I can talk about that. I can do the blogging, I can do the group activities very easily using the technology. And therefore, all these features of what you call quality, access, equity, diversity, affordability, speed, efficiency, all will come only if technology is supporting us. We don't have to work very, very hard, but we have to work intelligently with a focus. And that is where the technology will be a boon for us. And final word from my side, change is the order of the day. New education policy is precisely doing that. Only thing is, we have to keep an open mind, embrace it, use it effectively, use it purposefully or with a positive frame of mind. Say yes to this, and I'm sure this will help us going further. So my dear friends, with that, I'll possibly say that this is what I understand from the NEP right now. There would be challenges when we are implementing it, but then people like us and lots of dignitaries are here. We are meant to remove those obstacles and challenges to make sure that new education policy achieves all its targets in next 15 to 20 years. With that, I'll close my address. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Professor Gurudutt and also Professor Dinkar. And thank you to all the experts for listening to this version of NEP's, you can say, introduction. You might have known many, many things. Please feel free to counter or suggest the other views, because diversity, once again, in the views will bring the best value in assessing and using this furthermore. So thank you, and I look forward to listening to other distinguished experts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your keynote address, sir. You have certainly set the tone for the webinar. It is now the time for our esteemed resource persons to share their priceless knowledge with us. I now call upon Mr. Alex Abraham to introduce and invite our esteemed resource person, Professor Dr. N.K. Jayakumar, sir.
Thank you, Suraj. I deem it a great opportunity to be introducing the speaker for today, Professor Dr. N.K. Jayakumar, currently Law Advisor to the Chief Minister of Kerala. He has also held other prominent positions as Professor, Head and Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Kerala, Secretary, Kerala Legislative Assembly, Vice Chancellor, National University of Advanced Legal Studies, Kochi. Sir has also published 11 books and written many articles on current issues. He is also a visiting professor in several universities in India and abroad. He has been brought up a fellow Australian in Canberra, Vienna University, Australia. He has also been a regular contributor to the annual survey of Indian law published by the Indian Law Institute. He has also directed several research projects on social legal problems and is actively associated with several non-governmental organizations in the field of human rights, legal literacy, and law reforms. His major areas of interest are administrative law, jurisprudence, international law, and human rights. It is indeed a great honor and privilege for us to be having you in our midst, and we are very eagerly waiting to hear from you. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible now.
Yeah, thank you. I am thankful to the organizers, especially Dean, Professor Gurudat, and my own student, Professor Dinkar, for inviting me to this panel discussion on national education policy. The presence of my old friends like Professor Shastri gives me immense pleasure in attending this program. Honorable Vice Chancellor of SRM University, most venerable co-panelists, faculty and students of the university, other friends. To the words of the Honorable Vice Chancellor, but I am afraid whether I will be able to share the degree of extent of optimism he has expressed about the national education policy. He put an end to his lecture by exhorting us to react to the national education policy positively and use it effectively. Of course, if that is possible, then positive results we can expect. But the policy perspectives of the national education policy, there are many things which I find objectionable. The vision is of course laudable. The professed aim is to transform India into a vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge superpower by making both school and college education more holistic, flexible, and multidisciplinary, suited to 21st century needs, and bring out the unique capabilities of each student. Nobody can find any fault with this vision. But as we analyze the policy a little more close, let us start the way in which the policy was formulated and articulated. Now, India is considered to be a federal country, not fully federal, but still the federal spirit is very much there in our constitution. Education is a concurrent subject. Both center and states must be involved in the formulation of policy as well as implementation of the policy. Unfortunately, in the case of National Education Policy of 2020, the state governments were not given any active role. And when the policy has come out, now of course debates are going on, but policy is rather finalized. Now, what exactly is the role of the states, the units in our federal system in implementing the policy? Is it confined only to the implementation of the policy, or should it have been better if the states were involved in the policy formulation as well? So a kind of centralizing tendency, a sort of homogenization of education is the underlying spirit behind the national education policy. And my anxiety is whether such an approach is really in consonance with the federal or quasi-federal system that we have embedded in the Constitution of India. My second anxiety is whenever a new body is entrusted with the formulation of a new policy, this policy comes after the 1986 education policy, 34 years after the previous policy, and is inspired by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. But once we are thinking of formulating a new policy, naturally, we will explore what has gone wrong. And how to the challenging problems of our education system. Here you have to take into account the great diversity of India, the backward nature of several regions, several segments of society, who cannot still become a part of the mainstream. They are excluded from the field of education, field of opportunities. How do we design a policy which is inclusive, which includes all these persons who have been excluded so far from the mainstream? This is very significant. My question is whether the framers of the National Education Policy 2020 have given adequate attention to this aspect, the inclusive nature. It should be inclusive, education should be inclusive at the beginning. So how much emphasis was given in this policy for improving access, equity, quality? These are the three catchwords that should inform the framers of any policy on education. there should be a clear recognition of the role of the states. In a country of India's diversity, if you want to have a system which is highly centralized, a system which is homogenized, it is not going to take us anywhere. Each state has its own language, its own culture, its own habits, political environment. Everything is different. We remain a nation, nevertheless, there are subnationalities which have to be taken into account. You cannot just wish them away and have a policy which is, watertight, which is imposed on the units. So that perhaps is one of the weaknesses of the national education policy of 2020. The overarching powers that the center is going to assume, whatever the names we give to the various regulatory bodies, whether we call regulation light and tight, these are all playing with words, but how things are delivered at the end. So here, an excessively centralized structure of authority is envisaged. Whether that will augur well for our education system is a matter which we have to discuss. And second is a lack of attention to considerations of social equity and democratic access. The policy, in a way, impedes unconventional critical thinking and free inquiry. What is education for? Unless you can develop a spirit of inquiry, unless you can develop critical thinking in the minds of the students, education remains futile. And a further anxiety that arises in my mind is whether, contrary to its claims of inclusiveness, this policy is going to make education confined more so than before to a socially and economically privileged elite. Of course, today nobody can say that privatization cannot be accepted. It has been accepted, and we cannot do without an effective private sector in the field of education, whether it is school education or higher education. But how do these institutions function? Now, at some place in the policy, I found I mentioned that there is not going to be any distinction between a public institution, a government institution, and a private institution as far as education is concerned. How are we going to achieve that? What are the systems of accountability that you are going to put in place as far as private education institutions are concerned? I am more familiar with our experience in Kerala, where as a result of a very liberal policy of the state government some years back, the chief minister very proudly declared that I will give permission to anybody who comes to me to start an education institution, a college. no restraints, very liberal policy. And this policy resulted in the starting of hundreds of colleges, engineering colleges throughout the state, many of which are going to be closed down in the near future. So they have become commercial institutions. This kind of privatization leading to commercialization of education is something we have to be very cautious about. What will be the ultimate result of this tendency? How will it affect quality? How will it affect, access? So our experience has been that there are institutions of centers of excellence in the private sector, no doubt about that. There have also been institutions which lack even the basic requirements for an institution. They are interested only in extracting money from the students, their parents. So when you say that there is not going to be any distinction between a government institution and a private institution in real terms, what does it mean? Are you proposing to make private institutions as accountable as government institutions? Or are you proposing to make government institutions as unaccountable, irresponsible as the private sector in higher education? This question is not satisfactorily answered in the policy. Now, there are so many things to be said when I come to the details of the policy, but of course, our theme is a little different. We are here to discuss how the National Education Policy 2020 will impact legal education in our country. Legal education founds only 9 lines, the report of the committee, which has now come as the National Education Policy, NEP 2020. There's a brief section on professional education and a small paragraph on legal education. But I would say not particularly about NEP 2020, but generally about higher education in India, that our policy makers have considered legal education as a low priority area, leaving it mainly to the statutory professional body, Bar Council of India. And the Bar Council of India is a body of advocates, legal professionals. And their focus is only on professional education and restricting the entry into the profession. There's a legal education committee in which some educationists are also involved, but for the most part, the domination of the Bar Council of India in the field of legal education has been counterproductive. They introduce a reform, after some time they withdraw that, introduce another measure. It doesn't work. That's also withdrawn. So this kind of indecision, this kind of uncertainties in decision making, that has affected legal education in our country in a drastic manner. Now, under the new policy, what is going to happen? I already said that legal education remains a low priority in the policy making arena. And the importance of legal education is not merely as a professional education. There has to be different kinds of legal education. We have accepted law as an instrument of social transformation. We are living in a constitutional democracy which is highly committed to rule of law and social justice. How do we attain justice in society? The different dimensions of justice, social, economic, political, which are spelled out in the preamble of the Constitution of India. It is not merely the job of courts of law and lawyers, but we need citizens who know what is rule of law and abide by that principle. We need a culture of constitutionalism to come up in India, for which legal awareness, legal knowledge is required, not merely in the legal professional, but the whole society. That way, legal education has a larger, greater role to perform in our society. When I come to legal professionals, there again, the professional legal education also has to be attuned, not merely to imparting the skills of a profession, techniques of a profession. More than that, a value system, a framework of values. Unless skills are developed within a framework of values, what is going to happen? Legal professionals without any ethical commitments, it will be disastrous. So we need a legal profession with competence in legal skills, techniques of court craft. But more than that, the legal profession in our country must be able to develop a legal ideology. The legal profession in our country must be active participants in struggles for social justice. So how do we build up a legal profession? Our legal profession is the second largest in the world, 600,000 and more lawyers, second only to the United States of America. So quantitatively, it is quite a large number, but qualitatively, how do we rate our legal profession? Interestingly, I found a recent study by Mark Galanter and Nick Robinson, two American scholars who are very, very much interested in the Indian legal system, and made several penetrating studies on the working of the Indian legal system. Their finding, one of the interesting findings of that study is that a legal aristocracy has developed in India gradually. Earlier it was family practice. A person becomes a lawyer, he builds up a big clientele, big practice, then his son or son-in-law, daughter. So legal practice has largely been a family affair initially, but today it has been corporatized. Still the legal aristocracy survives. So unless we demolish this legal aristocracy, unless you have a legal profession in India which is committed to the constitutional values which I mentioned just now, you are never going to have law as an instrument of social transformation. A legal profession which will protect the interest of property, wealth, whether it is landed property as in the case of earlier years of the constitution or today corporate interests. There is no question of achieving justice, social justice in our society, economic justice in our society. So what exactly should be the perspective of legal education? See, one of the important measures that we have seen in recent years is the establishment of national law schools, separate universities for legal education. They have attained a certain degree of prestige. I was also the vice chancellor of one of the national law schools established in Kerala. And I have often been pondering what has been the contribution of these national law schools to the improvement of the legal system in India, the legal profession in India, the judiciary in India, quality of legislation in India. Have they been able to make any contribution? You have to debate. See, it is open to debate. But anyway, whether the national law universities are going to survive after the NEP 2020 is a moot question. There's a category mentioned that single faculty universities shall not be there. The policy is very categorical about that. Even the earlier Ashpal Commission also made a strong recommendation that we see this is basically against the concept of a university. University means a place where various disciplines converge, interact. So there must be multidisciplinarity. When you have only law in your curriculum and in your campus, you miss a lot of things. The students miss a lot of things. The vision of the faculty gets narrowed down. So as far as legal education is concerned, I would suggest that maybe Government of India will thinking about implementation of the policy must constitute a group of experts who will redefine, who have to reimagine and then redefine the task of legal education in India. It shall not be confined to professional legal education alone, but general legal education and legal education which is relevant and necessary for various sectors. And also the question whether legal education should continue to be imparted in separate institutions or it should become a part of multidisciplinary institutions. Then comes the crucial question of the role of the Bar Council of India, statutory professional body. The NEP 2020 speaks about doing away with many professional bodies, but they specifically say, except medical education and legal education, two bodies which are controlling medical education and one body which is controlling legal education are likely to survive. Let them survive, but they have so many things to do. But whether they should continue to exercise the same power with regard to legal education is a point that we have to discuss. Whether Bar Council of India should continue to exercise the same degree of control over legal education, the same exercise, the same power over legal education is a moot point. The National Education Policy 2020 has no clarity regarding what is going to be the future role of the Bar Council of India vis-a-vis the regulatory mechanisms that they have put in place. So these two questions, national law schools have come as a movement and they are well entrenched in our system now. And they are projected as there again, we have several questions to ask. Who has benefited as a result of these national law schools? The beneficiaries have mainly been the corporate sector. Very few of the products of the national law schools are interested in joining the legal profession or working in areas where law is considered as an instrument of social transformation. Practically, very few students opt for a career in law teaching or legal research, with the result that the objective with which national law schools are established to strengthen the system of law, the system of legal education in our country has not been met, has not been achieved. So we are at a stage now, especially thanks to the NEP 2020, for bringing this theme to the focus. Otherwise, we will remain idle. We will not debate these issues. So let us now debate what is the best strategy for legal education. What exactly should be the role of legal education in our country, where law is expected to play a transformative role. Legal education must produce persons who are competent enough to conceive law as a transformative instrument, as a transformative force. Unless our policymakers realize this, unless our policymakers are dedicated, committed to this ideal, to this perspective, and give top priority to legal education, we are not going to have any improvement in the field of legal education. One more issue that I want to point out before I end my words, that is not peculiar to legal education, but one thing that NEP 2020 has not paid much attention to. It is about the faculty. I don't want to give you any statistics, but all of us know that faculty positions are remaining vacant in practically every institution. And teaching is managed by people who are euphemistically called guest lecturers. Guest is a very endearing term, but these guest lecturers, are treated as second-rate persons in any institution. They come and go, and their remuneration is the least thing to say is that is very shameful on our part. Teachers being paid such low salaries. So how do we address that problem? The problem of guest faculty. Our ideals are very high. The lofty ideals are enumerated, but ultimately when it comes to the point of delivery, it is a teacher. It is a teacher. Whatever be the technological advancement and technological devices that we use in aid of our communication. It is basically the teacher, his original thinking, his capacity to instill certain qualities in the students. So many things are there. And how do we expect guest faculty? Institutions which are manned mostly by guest faculty to rise up to those levels. Legal education also, with my limited knowledge of the law colleges that are coming up, I find that guest faculty, number of guest faculty, or the proportion of guest faculty is alarming. So that should have been one of the cardinal areas where the framers of the national education policy should have paid attention. And also about research. A national body, overarching body to control research, which again, my apprehension is that such a body will be counterproductive. In the beginning, I was reminding you about the great diversity of our country. And in a country of such diversity, research priorities, research subjects, research funding, all these questions cannot be decided by a centralized agency. There must be flexibility. When that flexibility is lost, the very nature of research will change. Change not to the better, but it will go down. Quality of research will go down. Consideration will be commercial viability. So research which has to advance knowledge, produce knowledge, lead the nation to certain goals which are set before us, accelerate our progress. These things will not be achieved by centralizing funding and research decisions to a particular level at the center, by vested in an agency, a national level agency, National Research Foundation of so which again is a matter which concerns everybody. That's why I am putting my emphasis on that. Even legal research will be subsumed within the proposed body. So there are so many things, matters of detail, which we have to discuss threadbare in a workshop or something, where the implications of national education policy for legal education, the impact of this policy for legal education, probable impact, and what more is needed. Of course, within the policy, we can formulate details, we can supplement. So those things also must be a part of your discussion. I congratulate the organizers for organizing this program on a very significant and relevant subject, the national education policy. And I thank Professor Gurudutt and others for giving me an opportunity to speak a few words to you. I trust that those who are attending this program will also contribute. If it is not possible now, because we have only limited time, they can contribute, still contribute to the lively discussion. This has to be an ongoing discussion which has to produce certain results. I'm sure that the organizers will move in that direction. I again thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We graciously thank you for your address, sir. You have certainly enlightened us all. I now request Ms. Jerusha Meleni to introduce and invite our esteemed resource person, Professor Dr. T.S.N. Shastri, sir.
Good evening to the dignitaries present on this virtual dais. On this beautiful day, I take immense joy in introducing Professor Dr. T.S.N. Sastry, the Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar Law University, Chennai, as one of our speakers today. At present, Professor Dr. Sastry holds a number of positions, namely, he is the Vice President of the Indian Society of International Law, Professor in the Department of Law in Savitribai Phule, Pune University or SPPU, and a member of Academic Council of MNLU, NAAC, Bar Council of India, UGC, etc. Given his massive contribution to the field, it is no wonder to know that Professor Dr. Sastry was selected as an academic fellow of European Commission under Faculty Exchange Program to Lund University, Sweden, and Cultural Exchange Fellow of the Government of France, not just once, but twice. With this, I'm sure we are all excited to hear what he has in store for us. So without further ado, I call upon Professor Dr. T.S.N. Sastry to enlighten us. Sir, please.
Thank you. Good evening to one and all. I'm extremely happy to meet particularly my mentor, senior colleague, with whom I have a lot of affection, at least in the COVID period, to see him personally, Professor N.K. Jayakumar, and my another good friend, Professor Sancheti, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of SRM University, and my another classmate, friend and Vice Chancellor, Professor Suri Prakash, Dr. Gurdat, other faculty members of the university, student friends, faculty from various other universities. Well, it's the way the questions have been asked by many of the students on the plank here. I just advise them first read the National Education Policy, what it is. Because many of us are going by various kinds of aspects that whether the policy is good or bad, what it may be. Whenever a policy, particularly an education policy is introduced, there will be a lot of debate. This regularly happens. But this policy, compared to the previous policies, is altogether wants to change the education pattern and system, giving flexible option of cluster mode of teaching to the teachers and to the institutions, and to bring in various perspectives. Well, everybody have their own doubts. The policy that was originally conceived and brought in till last year, called as a draft national education policy, running into around 300 pages, as detailed analysis of various perspectives, which has been condensed and brought in. And I'm extremely happy that Professor Jayakumar has vividly touched the various perspectives and various issues. Even I myself have made it on many platforms that before the policy to be implemented, the stakeholders at every level should be involved and opinions have to be gathered and brought in. Because this new education policy wants to reformat the education completely in every field of education, right from elementary to university level. Definitely there would be a lot of doubts and other things will be there. And as the policy visualizes, we need not worry about that the policy is going to dump everything overnight. It is a phased reform that the policy, if implemented next year, suppose, it will take 15 years to achieve the entire policy implementation at staged manner of various perspectives. It will not be implemented overnight. Because the policy itself, if we look in, it conceives various types of steps that are needed to be taken into consideration. Well, my appeal to the authorities of the union or the states is that, well, whatever the phase we are going to implement, first we should think of addressing the problems that are there in the stakeholders, particularly higher education. University education is considered. What are the pitfalls? How the vice chancellors can deal? Of course, the UGC has conducted 2-3 seminars, conferences calling all the vice chancellors. What I found in these conferences, where I was also a participant as a vice chancellor, you don't get much time because it's about 500 vice chancellors or 600 vice chancellors you address, you don't. Region-wise, balancing-wise, subject-wise, discipline-wise, conferences have to be conducted to deal with the various issues to be addressed, and then the states who are the main stakeholders should be called in to discuss and then implement. Definitely the policy will be able to achieve its objectives. Because last year, when Mr. Sancheti was the president, we attended 1 or 2 conferences of AU also. We have presented our views. But the makers of the policy are not in that tone to address the issues but conduct a general conference and hush up the policy to be implemented, which definitely will bring a lot of issues before addressing. When we go for a systematic change, we have to address the concerns and then address. Well, we are not here to discuss all the aspects of NEP here, whether it's good or bad. Only time I can decide what we are going to deal with various aspects or various changes that are coming. I have chosen as a student of law. A particular perspective is the significance of a National Institute of Judicial Education and Research. Why have categorically stated this topic to Professor Dutt when he asked me that the national education policy is advocated in the beginning that everything will be brought in under a particular higher education regulator where one or few members will be there from different disciplines and the national education regulator will deal everything. Seeing this, the professional body, the Bar Council of India, ran pillar to post and seen that it should be stopped temporarily. But the new education policy, which advocates, says that there will not be any single faculty universities. They will be converted into multi-faculty universities or interdisciplinary faculty universities. An excellent idea, no doubt. Uni-faculty universities are not going to thrive much. They have to be brought in with interdisciplinary perspectives to study law. Because law is not a social science. Law is being a normative, behavioral, socio-psycho-scientific subject. Its norms, evolution, perspectives need to be understood from various perspectives. Particularly in the era of science and technology that has been developed a lot, we need to study law from a different angle to the exposition, for which, unfortunately, over a period of time in the last 7 decades, or even after the establishment of the Bar Council of India, we could not achieve the objectives for which the professional education has to be started. Suppose if we look at the American Bar Council, any student can see. I request most of the students here to look into the American Bar Council. You can register freely in American Bar Council the type of activities that are conducted by the Bar Council of America are entirely different. Unfortunately, the Indian Bar Council is not doing that much. It is only providing as a regulator a license and license fee and prescribing the syllabus. That's all. None beyond that. Though it has established a legal education committee. In tune with the call given by some of the professors, it has not spelled out the various policies of the Legal Education Committee. Because the 2019 proposed syllabus of the Legal Education Committee of the 5-year course or 3-year course, whatever it may be, it is just like an old wine in a new bottle. There is no change in the syllabus. It is available on the website of the Bar Council itself, Bar Council of India itself. Because the Legal Education Committee, if we look into the 2008 regulations, it has been started for continuing legal education, teacher training, advanced specialized courses, professional courses, and to link with foreign universities and to promote research and to bring in professional orientation in legal education. These are the objectives for which a Legal Education Committee has been constituted. Unfortunately, for varied reasons, we need not go into, the Legal Education Committee has bogged down with the regular features and it could not do much. And it's still, for me, it's a non-starter. Why I'm saying because last year, the National Law School University of Delhi, with the help of ICSSR, varied professors from across the country, we had deliberated so many issues on the reforms of legal education. The book is coming. In fact, I have written a lengthy paper of around 52 pages paper analyzing the pitfalls of legal education and advocating the reforms in legal education. Maybe Bar Council may not like it. I don't know. We are not against Bar Council. But the chairman, members and others are very busy practitioners. They may not have a role as a professional body to control, but give the lamp and lantern to the academicians who can regulate it. Because the idea of national law schools was conceived by Professor Upendra Bakshi in 1975 and advocated by, propagated further by Professor S.K. Agrawala. Professor Agrawala and Bakshi have written letters to the government of India in 76 to start national law schools concept, like the Harvard Law School or anything. But for varied reasons, it couldn't start. Then it was Professor Menon who took up the lantern from the ideology and then started the National Law School, first National Law School in 1986, 87. But it took time for it to settle and bring in and establish. Today, there are about 21 national law schools and there are 4 or 5 affiliating law universities. The first being Tamil Nadu Ambedkar Law University, then Karnataka, now Rajasthan, Orissa is in the pipeline. And soon we will maybe every state may start an affiliating law university, also making all the law colleges to be affiliated. But what we are teaching in the 5 years or 3 years law course, there's no much change. I hope Professor Jayakumar and others agree with me that what we studied about 30 years back, I remember when I was studying as a student of law, these 21 subjects, same 21 subjects, 22 subjects are there, and added from non-discipline, non-legal subjects and specialization courses, this courses, that courses, and it comes to around 58 subjects altogether, including professional papers, professional ethics, and everything. No research orientation, no professional orientation is advocated. Whereas on the other side, if we look at with the with the syllabus or the teaching perspectives that are there in American law schools or any other law schools that we link in. Even Australia, which has changed recently to 4 years of law course. I have also advocated in my paper, across the country, you should abolish 5 years and 3 years and only advocate 4 years after +2 by giving +2 a composition of legal education, one more sector. And don't teach all the 21 subjects, 23 subjects as CPC, IPC, every code. Teach the minimum basic purpose for first 2 years with the interdisciplinary perspective, with a research orientation. And from the 3rd year onwards, give them more practical orientation where they can practical perspective and give the conjunction of interdisciplinary subjects orientation. Because today we are talking sociology, history, economics, public administration, so many subjects we are talking in law class of 5 years. The student is bewildered and not able to understand why they are studying these subjects. Actually, these subjects are studied mainly to get the exposition of the various interdisciplinary perspectives, how they can implement the legal legislative policy systems that we have in the country, or make a critical analysis of a judgment given by a court to see whether that can be implemented to the society or not. Because if we take a subject like law and economics, it is the economic analysis that prescribes, particularly in a case like damages, or when you count of a measurement of a damages to be awarded by a court, whether the damage awarded by a court is sufficient or not. What is the legal prism of it? Or what is the sanctity of the legislative perspective of it? We are not able to measure. All this led 2 years back, why I'm giving this brief introduction. The Supreme Court of India 2 years back conducted a conference under the aegis of the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice of India, to the Vice Chancellors of all the national law schools, wherein it was uniformly, it is available in the website of the Supreme Court, everywhere you can read the book. The reforms part, which it has stated, very clearly stated that almost all the judges and the participant speaker, including Professor N.R. Madhav Menon and others, made it very clear that legal education is in a dire consequences, and the blame ultimately put on law teachers not teaching law properly. This is been done. But then of late, the Supreme Court and the honorable judges of various courts have also felt that judges and judicial officers also needs rigorous regular training. Very important observation by the Supreme Court. That's it. Even lawyers need regular training. If we look at America, a lawyer, when he registers as an advocate, every 2 years, in the winter vacation or in the summer vacation, they have to go to a particular university and undergo special training programs conducted with the updated developments and do the research and come back. Like this, they have to do at least half a dozen courses in a span of 10 years. Then only they are allowed to continue for permanent registration. Same is applicable to law teachers, law professors in most of the foreign universities too. But in India, we want everything permanent on the first go. First day, I register as a lawyer. That's it. I won't do anything, and we don't follow the profession. This morning, I was reading the Haryana Bar Council had to expel an advocate for advertising on the social media. Well, advertising on social media is prohibited by the Advocates Act under section 34 or so. Under 35, it's a violation. And why I am saying, because when we don't have the research perception, research knowledge and analytical perspective of law, all these problems will crop up. So there is an advocacy by huge number of professors. In fact, in a number of seminars in Kerala and other places, Professor Jayakumar and myself, we were all arguing and discussing since long that there is a need for a national level institute. In fact, I was been given to understand that the Chief Justice and some of the judges of the Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court of India want such an institute, but the government of India is not interested. I don't know how far it is going to materialize, but such an institute is necessary because if we see most of the legislations in our country, they are not suitably brought in compared to older period legislations. There are a lot of gaps in the legislation because a justice department, some few people sit together, law people, and they draft something, and then it goes for a select committee, and the committee reads it, and then it goes into the review committee, and from review committee it goes to the House to introduce, either at assembly or at the parliament. Professor Jayakumar sir is very well aware because he was the Secretary General of the Kerala State Assembly as a legal wing of the Kerala State Assembly, that how the bills will come in. Well, when an academician sits there, it's altogether different. They object, they bring in. But when an administrator sits, they want a legislation to be passed according to the government in power. Because each government is considered with a political party. So the political party will try to bring in a legislation according to its ideology, what it has promised in the elections. So in that sense, we have a lot of gaps in the legislative perspective. And we have so many multiple legislations having various perspectives. And recently, there was an appeal sent by some of the people, and there is a case filed in the Supreme Court. Interestingly, public interest litigation is filed and admitted last week that simple legislation should be drafted, not complex legislation should be introduced. Let us see what the Honorable Supreme Court is going to do in this case. The public interest litigation is filed already and admitted by the Supreme Court. Because law is, because we say not knowing law is a crime. Well, not knowing law, it's how do we understand the law to understand the every perspective with a lot of sections and various multiple perspectives that are there. So a judicial and a legal research institute is required. Well, there is a judicial academy, every state has a judicial academy. But there it is combined for training only for the municipal magistrates or the judges, by the judges or few academicians who are invited, but there is no coherent interaction between academicians, lawyers, and judges. We have disintegrated the legal education, our legal profession from other wings. Lawyers means lawyers only will practice. Teachers are not allowed to have any practical experience. If you go to medicine, well, a doctor has medical experience to teach the student, where a law teacher doesn't know anything. He has to read only whatever there in the IPC or whatever it may be. Thanks to COVID-19, which has provided this virtual conference material. Recently, last week, the Gujarat High Court has given the virtual court how it goes on. That means each university has to bring in. So my idea is that the national institute has to be brought in, not only just to deal with or start courses. It need not start courses. It can coordinate with the Bar Council of India, coordinate with the universities, and have certain wings of in it, that a research wing, a comparative law, which is very important. Professor Jayakumar himself is an expert in comparative law perspective. Because international law, private international law, which are very important. Very rarely we read about private international law. Professor Jayakumar has written a book also on public international law, lectures on public international and other perspectives. So in this globalized economic world, we need more intricate perspectives of law, which we need to understand and think and give it to the student, for which we need not study CPC, RPC, every act of it. Most important parts of law you teach. The philosophical perspectives of law we teach to the student, with more practical orientation from the second year onwards. Send the student to various lawyers, law firms, and deal with the practical orientation. And this institute can give direct training perspective to younger judges. Because once I become a lawyer or a law professor or law teacher, we cannot think that I know everything. So, because the subjects are changing, multidisciplinary, and law is the ultimate subject that every matter comes to the court of law. Any matter you take now, every matter comes. So, how do we know? How do the lawyers will know to present? The lawyers will say, I know the subject, but you have to go. Because I know in private international law, when cases come, some of the judges will look for a professor who is there, an expert. Or now we are getting in intellectual property rights. Now blockchain, cryptocurrency, various aspects are coming. Cases will come, definitely. Ours is a very wider field where cases have come, where judges and lawyers, everybody have teachers, everybody have to teach. So the interactive perspective should be brought in, that at the senior level, well, senior people can train them, junior level people can be training them, and also they give training with the state and the union level legislative framework, how we can make a simplistic, readable legislative perspective. So this institute should be established with the 3 regional bodies or 4 regional bodies in 4 parts of the country, with a centrally located institute. Everything need not be in Delhi, but okay, because parliament, everything is there, central authority, you can have it in Delhi with the overwhelming power of the Chief Justice of India and the law minister at the national level. Some professors of law and some legislators should come in with interdisciplinary perspective of professors, not all law professors. At the state level, it is the state law ministers and others of the particular region can regular interaction. The state bar councils can bring in, because the Bar Council of India only is regulates the legal education. The state bar councils have no much role at all in India now. So that kind of a perspective of institute is brought in, definitely, which has been advocated since long. Since long it has been advocated, but we are not giving thrust to it. It only has to facilitate research, training program, and interdisciplinary courses, like very important crash courses to lawyers and others, like law and fashion technology. Punjab University has started law and fashion technology, a very fascinating subject, or law and film industry. Because everywhere we have human rights violation, we have fundamental rights, we have fundamental principles. So what is the condition of bonded labor or exploitation of labor, or what are the various perspectives? And like the pandemic diseases come, how do you regulate or how do you deal the pandemic perspectives? All this type of advanced research can be taken into consideration to assess the state and the educational perspective. Then legal education, reformation, everything which Bar Council, universities, professors can do it. But then the regular interaction between the judges, lawyers, and the law teachers put together as we can, I always call them justice workers. We are all justice workers. We are all one family. There is no discrimination or there is no hateism towards one another. All are one. But we have to interact at regular intervals. Previously, lawyers used to come and take classes. But nowadays, the trend has reduced because of opportunity, employment, and lawyers are too busy. Senior lawyers are too busy to come. Some of the judges now started coming again to the universities to deliver lectures. But this should be regular. The retired judges and others should come into the institute and to the universities, and then the legal education, the deficiency of legal education and other perspectives can be propelled and fulfilled. This should be taken because the national education policy simply advocates no unilateral fire university should be there. Well, it may be, it's a welcome trend, but how far it is going to be a multidisciplinary perspective with interdisciplinary perspective that can be brought in within law, for which an institute is definitely required, and that should be important. Recently, in one of my papers which I have written to the government of India, I have a policy document on reforms in judiciary, legal education, and access to justice, a paper which I sent just a fortnight back. I have advocated very clearly that these are the important. I had a discussion with the Honorable Law Minister of the Union of India, but he said, sir, law universities are there. Why do you need one more institute? Law universities are there, law universities are doing this service. I told him, you are advocating law universities should not be uni-faculty universities soon under the education policy. Then why don't you? But IITs, IIMs, and other organizations you have, why not we have? Because corporate sector is one important sector which need to be targeted with proper legal perspective policies. If that is done, definitely the higher education can bring in the golden era which India can contemplate in the world of nations, and methods, various issues can be brought in. There are various issues. I won't take much time. Already, I think I have exceeded my quota of time given to me. And I thank you one and all. I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you one and all.
Thank you so much for your address, sir. Your eloquence has indeed delighted us. We request all the participants to stay till the end, as we will be issuing a feedback form after the session. The feedback form will be used to generate certificates. Therefore, we request all the participants to stay till the end of the webinar. I now hand over the proceedings to Ms. Reshmi Nair, student of 2nd BA LLB Honours. Thank you.
Thank you, Suraj. Good evening, everyone. Let us further move ahead with the webinar. I would request Ms. Arya Dinesh to introduce our honorable guest, Professor Dr. Surya Prakash, the Vice Chancellor of DSNLU, Visakhapatnam.
I take great honor and privilege to introduce Professor Dr. S. Surya Prakash to you all. Professor Surya Prakash is a Vice Chancellor of Damodaram Sanjeev Iyer National Law University, Visakhapatnam. Sir has obtained his BL from Acharya Nagarjuna University, Guntur, and Masters from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam, with a first class in the area of labor and industrial laws. Later, Sir was awarded PhD in law from Berhampur University, Odisha. Professor Surya Prakash is a prolific writer and has written on so many contemporary issues. Professor Surya Prakash is also the author of the famous book Turning Point, The Story of a Law Teacher. It is the biography of Professor N.R. Mahadeva. It is also the story of National Law School movement in India. Sir has also written 25 articles and presented more than 40 papers in various national and international seminars and conferences. Sir has done projects for the Department for International Development. Surya Prakash Sir has prepared the manual on health laws and compendium on agriculture and allied laws for the state of Madhya Pradesh. He is the founder editor of Indian Law Review, Law Journal of NLIU Bhopal. And I think Sir is a role model for all aspiring law students. And it's indeed a great to have such an eminent academician with us this evening. On behalf of School of Law, SRM ISB, I request you to enlighten us with your valuable words. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I deem it a privilege to participate in this webinar conducted by the SRM University. I express my gratitude to Sandeep Sancheti, the Vice Chancellor of SRM University, and I greet Professor N.K. Jaikumar, Professor T.S.N. Sastry, and my old friend, Professor Gurdat, with whom I had the bond from Bhopal when he was working with Jagran Lake City University, and other faculty members and my dear students. So today, the whole nation is discussing about this new education policy 2020. And what is the importance and how this new policy is different from other policies? And since independence, is it the only policy which is considered as a turning point today? And whether earlier there were no such good policies on education? The answer is yes. So right from when 1948-49, the University Grants Commission came into existence, and there was in 1952-53 the Secondary Education Commission, and then the most important commission on education was by in 1964-66 Dr. D.S. Kothari Commission, which is popularly known as Kothari Commission, and later on in 68 National Policy on Education was declared, and again in 1986 the new National Policy on Education during the time of Sri Rajiv Gandhi, and there was also N. Janardhan Reddy Committee on School Education, and then in new policy on education was modified in 1992, and in 2016 there is a TSR Subramaniam Committee report, and now in 2019 we have this DS Kasturi Rangan Committee report, which is now popularly known as New Education Policy 2020. And we should acknowledge that Dr. Kasturi Rangan and his team members, they have taken this Herculean task. For the first time, they have invited the suggestions from the public, from the academicians, from every stakeholder, from parents, anyone, any citizen from India could give suggestions. And so nearly some 2 lakh suggestions they received, and they read, and most of the sessions, after deliberations and discussions for more than 1 year, then they framed this policy. That means it is a policy which was participated by and large by the people of India, and we may say that it would be untrue if we say that the central government itself has unilaterally drafted this policy. And so there are certain good things in this policy. And as I said that even earlier, I consider that even Kothari Commission, which was submitted its report, it was also one of the very good policy decisions, but however, they are poorly implemented. So in India, the problem is that we don't have that zeal in implementation of the policies or the recommendations of the committees. So even for criminal law reforms, we have this, for just only to say, for example, and we say there is justice delayed, justice denied, and there were so many comments that at most of the time justice is not delivered, and even if it is delivered, it is defective, something like that. And we have Justice Malimat Committee report, and which has provided very good recommendations, but it is in the Almiras in the Shastri Bhavan, but it was never implemented. So similarly, the problem in India is, in my considered opinion, a problem is regarding the enforcement or implementation of the best of the best minds. When they make recommendations, just we read and we debate, we discuss, and after the heat generated, that would be subsided after some time, and we ignore and we forget. And that's what happened to Kothari Commission, that's what happened to New Education Policy, and more or less the same may happen even to this new education policy also. Unless there is change in the attitude of not only the policy makers, but the political bosses, how serious they are in implementing the policy. And for example, now we are providing 1.5% or something like that, around 1.5% of the GDP for the education. And the new education policy envisages that there should be 6% of GDP should be spent on education. If any government, maybe this government or next government, irrespective of the political party. So when we are discussing the policy, it does not belong to any particular political party. It is the policy of the government of India. So 6% GDP, if at all, if it is definitely, we will become one of the developed nations. So if we look into the developed nations, particularly the US, Japan, and for that matter, any country. So they became developed nations not because of their resources or because of their military might or something else, but because of their universities, because of their education and educational policies. So unlike US or UK, neither we have this common school system nor neighborhood school system. And we have different schools, and like that, even on research. And today, US is the most developed nation because of its spending on education, as well as promoting the education and inviting, accommodating the best minds in all subjects, and providing them the employment opportunities in the society, in American society. So this kind of research the research output has made the America one of the wealthiest nations. Similarly, after the Second World War, if we see the Japanese economy, which was shattered by the Second World War, and 50s and 60s, they are considered to be the miracle economy, the Japanese economy. It did miracles. And even today, if you ask any economist, if the GDP is going down, immediately the Japanese government, they pump money into the educational institutions for research. The government, the Japanese government, they invest a lot of money into the research for the recovery of its economy. So that is the strength of education. So education in India, it's well, I can't say that it is totally neglected, but the priority and importance that has to be given to the education and to the educationists, that is to the teachers. So teachers, they are considered in India only as regulators of morality. So all moral luggage will be on the shoulders of the teachers, and they are neither workmen nor teacher in India. So the respect that is accorded to a teacher is not, it's slowly diminishing or vanishing, but whereas the moral luggage, as the teachers, they have to show the path and light to the society, something like that. So here, coming back to this new education policy, and just I would like make an overview. No doubt you know that how the system has articulated the new things and new grading, but at the primary level, it has given importance to the mother tongue, and the credit system and the system of academic bank of credit So that is where after joining in a degree like a degree course, after 2 years he can get a diploma, and then he can get a degree, and then if he completes 4 years he will get the BSc or BCom, whatever it is, honors degree. So like that, multiple entry and exit points, that is keeping in view the, suppose nowadays if a graduate after second year, if he has to, due to any reason, if he has to discontinue, then he has to leave the college empty handed. But in the new system, there is a provisions that after 2 years he will get a diploma, and then a degree, and then a degree honors. So this is a very practical and very realistic approach, keeping in view the needs of time, because at times the students and the parents, because now everything is coming on contract basis. So even the parents, they work on contract basis at different places, and there is no guarantee that his contract of service may be renewed in the organization or not. And if the father or the parents, the breadwinner, loses the job, automatically it will have an adverse impact on the education of the children. So probably that might be what prompted the Dr. Kasturi Rangan and his teammates to make this multiple entry and exit point. And the examination procedure was made more flexible, open book system, examinations on demand, etc., etc. So if we want to understand this new education policy, one should have a review of how the institutions and how the universities, colleges, no doubt, ever since the dawn of independence, the number of colleges and number of universities has been increased. But what is the quality of education that is imparted in these colleges or universities? That's more important. And fortunately or unfortunately, as we have economic inequalities, similarly, in India, there are so many divisive forces, and unfortunately, even this education also has become a divisive force in India. How come? I will explain. Because if you take, for example, engineering. In engineering, we have the private engineering colleges, and then the state, in the universities, state universities, there are engineering colleges, and then we have NITs, and then we have IITs. So all these, whether a private engineering college or a state-run engineering college or NIT or IIT, the degree would be BTech or BE, whatever it may be. So, but when it comes to the value of a degree from IIT is different. The value of a degree from a private college, where the undergraduate final year students, immediately after completion of final year, then he will join as faculty and he will teach. So the quality of education is differs. When the quality of education differs, automatically the quality in employability also will differ. So this is what's happening. So that's the reason why you, for that matter, you take any branch of education, even for legal education. Even in the legal education, we have the national universities, and then we have the state universities, and then we have the private universities, and then we have the private law colleges. And what the law universities offering, that is different. No doubt, the regulating body of, that is Bar Council of India, is the same for a private law college or for a private university or a state university law faculty or a central university law faculty or a national university law faculty. But the Bar Council is same, and the Bar Council prescribe even the same 21 subjects. So, but let me tell you, I have 30 years of teaching experience. Almost 10 years I spent in a private law college, and some 20 years I was with three different national universities. And I was a long time professor, and still I'm a professor of law at National University of Bhopal. And there we used to offer at one point of time 98 papers, subjects in undergraduate course. You name any latest development in any branch of law, whether it is sports law, feminist jurisprudence, or agriculture law, law relating to energy, or any, and that autonomy and flexibility we adopted. And the director or the vice chancellor, he has the free hand to take the teachers and to recruit, if necessary, new hands. And a total autonomy has prompted these national universities in one way to grow, and which I may say that if not all, some of the national universities are on par with the best of the best law colleges or law schools in the world. And not only that, just for example, 1 week back, the students of NLU Delhi, they won Manfred Lach's Space Law Moot Court competition. And sorry, NLU Delhi students are winners, and the students from Vienna Law School, Austria, they were the runners. So why I'm saying this is that the same bar council, the NLU Delhi or Bhopal or Bangalore or Bhopal or Visakhapatnam, and all of them, they are regulated and controlled by the bar council. So when coming back to this divisiveness, so unfortunately in India, education itself has become one of the sources of divisiveness, and these elite schools, they have become islands of excellence in legal education, and with high fees, no doubt. And common man, it is difficult for a clerk or for a common man to admit his wards in these national universities. And on the other hand, we have the state universities, and also we have the private law colleges, and we know the sorry state of affairs, except a few law colleges in the country. In most of the private law colleges, hardly you will find any regular faculty, and that if they are faculty, hardly they're very much underpaid. If the UGC prescribes for an assistant professor 60,000 rupees or 70,000 rupees, and a lecturer in a private law college, he will get some 10,000 or 12,000, and sometimes even less than that. So we have a proverb in North, when agar master ji भूखे रहेगा, then गंगा निकलती है कानपुर से, गंगोत्री से नहीं. So if a half-starved teacher, if he has to teach, he will teach that Ganga starts from Kanpur, not from Gangotri. So my friends, why this divisiveness was not addressed? And more so, the policy has envisaged that they will take some 100 universities of excellence. And if you look into the fundamental duties, Article 51A, subclass J, which says that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rise to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. So the directive principle, the fundamental duty says that there should be excellence in every sphere of life, both by the individual and collectively. But this grading of the educational institutions, which cause which is not good for the society. And as such that even this, though this was a policy declared by the central government, even though the subject of education is in the concurrent list. See, hardly every university is an autonomous body, and no government will interfere normally, at least on paper. And these institutions of excellence, they are excellent only because of non-interference from the outsiders. So this is our experience in the national universities. And there are only in each state, there may be some 28 or 29 central universities, and IITs, IIM, including all these central institutes, including IISc, the maximum, the total number of central institutions may be around 100. But whereas the state universities are 700 or 800 or even more than that. So here what I would like to convey, impress upon is that even though this is a central policy, whereas federalism is very much respected because the state universities are governed by the state education department, as well as most probably in every state there will be an IAS officer who will act as the secretary of higher education and commissioner for higher education. These are the IAS officers who will control these state universities in the state. So my humble submission is that though this is a central, so this policy has given the broader picture, the outlines, and how you develop the university and how you implement it is totally within the jurisdiction of the state, as far as the state universities are more and the central universities are outnumbered by the state universities. So the lot of flexibility is there, but now the consideration is that what is the status of state universities in each and every state? As earlier speaker said, that education unfortunately is not a priority to any political party in this country. Education, because more popularism, and if you spend that 200 crores on some freebies to the voters, again all these welfare measures are the investment for to get back the votes. So this is the harsh reality in most of the states. So the state universities, now the funding is gradually reducing, and the teachers, the number of vacancies, unfortunately earlier what is used to happen in the private sector, where the teachers are underpaid or not paid, etc. Now even the state universities, even sometimes in central universities also, the contract teachers. So education is a serious business where the teacher, he has to devote himself, both all his mental capabilities. So here the teachers, they are not properly treated, whereas in some states they are called guest faculty, and in some states they are called Vidya volunteers, and then some states the Guruji, Atithi Prajapak. So the nomenclature differs, but however, the objective is that to keep the teacher on the tenterhooks for 10 months and remove him for 2 months. And there is no security, there is no guarantee that next year, and whatever the 10 months, it is on contract basis. And I do not understand, when the UGC has prescribed a particular scale of pay, a particular salary, and why the teacher should be denied, and whether the government or the management, they expect that the teacher should give his full, he should work to the utmost capabilities, but when it comes to the remuneration, There may be some good universities even in private sector, but most of the times. So this is the area which was not addressed in the new education policy. So even the policy may be good, and at the stage of implementation, if you cannot expect excellence from a teacher who is with a who is in half starved, or who is now who could not make his both ends meet every month. So, my friends, what the policy, whereas promoting, as earlier speakers has stated, that the objectives are laudable, the mission is very good, but when it comes to the implementation, to what extent? And no doubt in India, we cannot bring education accessible to each and everyone only by the governments. Private players also should participate, and there is a lot of reasoning, and also the private players should help the states in improving and in increasing the gross enrollment ratio, and which we cannot deny. But whereas in that doesn't mean that definitely the state universities, they are meant for the common man, and no doubt in the private universities the fee is always high, and in the state universities, in the government colleges, the fee is less. And in India, even today, the more than 50% they are in the middle class and the lower middle class. So in order to make education accessible, quality education, excellence in education accessible to the common man, the states as well as center should provide sufficient funds to these state universities where common man goes send his wards for education. And whereas the private universities, private colleges, they do serve the nation in their own way. So if whether it is Dr. Kasturi Rangan Commission, or whether it is Kothari Commission, so where we have to pay much attention is the quality teachers. And as I said, that one cannot expect quality with empty stomachs. So the quality teachers and the library facilities, and to run the university sufficient funds, and also in my considered opinion, as most of the state universities and colleges, they are I think it is better to have an educationist at for controlling these universities and colleges at the government level. And these are the certain things which not directly addressed by the new education policy. And as such, that tomorrow, and in fact, there was no much reference to the illegal education, and the area which is very, very difficult, because the Bar Council of India is one of the most strongest body in India. And we know that when Section 89, that is alternative dispute resolution, was introduced for the settlement of matters within the court or outside the court. So a person like Ram Jethmalani, when he was the law minister in 2002, he introduced the amendment to CPC, and Section 89 was introduced to provide for this arbitration, mediation, lok adalat, etc., etc. There was a strike by the advocates, and ultimately the strong man like Ram Jethmalani, he was forced to resign for introducing this Section 89 in the CPC. So that is the strength, and that is the say of the Bar Council of India. So probably whatever may be the reasons, new education policy didn't address much about the legal education. and it is a BCI which is having the control over this legal education. And one good thing is that they have constituted the legal education committee, and from time to time. But the only thing which bothers me is that the kind of education that is available in good law schools, that is not available in a private law college. So that's how I look at these differences in the standards as divisiveness. So divisiveness in the education. So no doubt the objective of Professor N.R. Madhav Menon was that to supply, to increase the standards of bar and bench by establishing these law schools. When others could not venture to implement the idea of this 5-year law course, when N.R. Madhav Menon, he happened to be the Secretary of Bar Council of India Trust. So it was Ram Jethmalani, it was Ranjit Singh, and others at the time, Bar Council of India. They asked Professor N.R. Madhav Menon, why don't you translate this idea into action? So initially there were no takers, and hardly there was only government has provided the land, and the credit goes to Padma Shri and later Padma Bhushan, Professor N.R. Madhav Menon, who brought some dignity and honor to the law teachers and to the law graduates. So earlier the saying goes that if one could not get a seat in any other course, for such a student, the ultimate rehabilitation center is the law college, and in the universities, the law department. So that trend was changed. Today, the law universities, even in the CLAT, for 2,000 seats or so, 2,400 or something like that, more than 60, 70,000 students, they are appearing every year. And no doubt, the law students, after graduating from the law universities, mostly they are preferring the corporate. And we cannot, this is a harsh reality, and we cannot deny and we cannot stop them, because it is their life. They have their right to choose their own profession. But my submission is that the Bar Council, because the quality of law graduates, so my humble submission is that if we want a good bar and bench, no doubt, ultimately the persons, the law graduates who are serving the common man and the society, they come from the traditional colleges and the traditional universities. And most of the law university students, they opt for corporate, etc., PSUs, etc., etc. Now they are also going for bar and bench because of some lucrative salaries and security in the job, etc., etc. So, my friends, new education policy is a game changer, provided if the states and the central government provide sufficient funds, both to the at primary level to the PG level. That is, at any cost, the education, the decent standard education should be accessible to the common man. Then only a nation, a society will progress. There was a old saying, probably if I remember correctly, by Confucius. So when the prince asked him, what are the priorities, where I should spend the money, the government, the state money. So the proverb goes like this. There is the advice given to the prince was that if you want to invest for 1 year, you invest in paddy. If you want to invest for 10 years, you invest in orchards. If you want to invest in future of the nation, you invest in education. This was the advice given by the minister to the king. So I hope that the governments, both central government and state governments, may realize the importance of education and they invest in more education for the bright future of this country. And with this, I conclude. So this is an overview because this is not a structured lecture because due to my work schedule, I could not. This is an overview and thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to express my feelings and share my thoughts with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with your speech. As law aspiring students, we are glad to have such dignitaries this evening. Since most of the questions are already addressed by our honorable guests, we would proceed further. Now I request Mr. Harsh Tugar to introduce the Dean of School of Law, SRM IST, Professor Dr. C.A. Gurudutt.
Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a great honor for me to introduce and welcome Professor Gurudutt Chilkunda, Dean, Faculty of Law, SRM IST Kattankuluttur, for this program on this startlingly beautiful evening. He is a senior teacher having a distinct experience spanning over more than 3.5 decades in teaching and research. He has specialized in the fields of constitutional law, family law, law and social transformation, and many more. Sir is a product of Mysore University and obtained all his degrees from that university. He served as alma mater as a visiting professor for about 14 years at postgraduate studies in law. Professor has worked in different capacities like Principal of Law College, Academic Advisor, Dean for Law, Dean for Academics, Director, Controller of Examination, Pro Vice Chancellor, and etc. He is the former Vice Chancellor of Raffles University, Namrana, and the Founder Director and the Dean of School of Law of Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal. He is also the Vice President of International Society for Promotion of Agricultural and Food Products Exports, shortly known as ISAFE. Sir has successfully guided a number of students for PhD program as well. He has executed funded projects, evaluated a number of PhD theses for prestigious national and international universities, and has had a number of research publications, including books. Furthermore, Professor has visited different foreign universities on academic assignments and is a member of International Association of Law Schools and an active member in many important committees of it. He is a member of several policy-making bodies and advisory boards of different institutions and universities, and is the visiting and guest professor of a number of universities and institutions, including National Law School, Bangalore. Moreover, he is profoundly loved and respected by everyone as a teacher and for having an impeccable character and expertise. He is the person behind this program. I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harsh. Respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Sancheti, Professor N.K. Jayakumar, Professor Shastriji, and my beloved friend, Professor Surya Prakash. At the outset, I thank you all for having spared your precious time, that too in this festival days. Thank you. Dear friends, permanent thing on this earth is a change. We have to keep ourselves open for the change. It's true, there are a number of issues involved in the new educational policy. But one thing I tell you, each and every word uttered by our experts is a manifestation of their own experience, their vision, and their concern towards legal education. But one thing I would like to share with you, We all belong to one generation. We did our law, the 3-year course, some traditional colleges, conventional university. This is one point. Second point, if you look at the history, from bar at law to 2 years BL, then 3 years LLB, then 5 years of professional course. These changes have taken in 1 century. Now look where we stand. As the Professor Surya Prakash just now mentioned, now people, the students, high merit, they aspire to get a seat in a national law schools. That stage we have reached. True, Professor N.K. Jayakumar highlighted few deficiencies and he expressed his apprehension how this new education policy may not affect inclusiveness as it has been focused in the policy itself. Then Professor Shastri explained how challenges may come to implement this due to sociological and institutional problems. Professor Surya Prakash explained elaborately how the things have taken place, how it has taken the development, different commissions and role of Bar Council, all the kind of things. Ultimately, what is the conclusion? According to me, yes, we are heading towards some change. Friends, this much is true. This generation of law study, we are very, very lucky when you compare ourselves. You are open to so many changes. Technology is with you and before you. Use it. Have an exposure. And be very competent personalities, able to take any contemporary challenges effectively, but not compromising with the basic qualities and the virtues of the life. That's the only aspiration of what we want. So I fail in my duty if I do not acknowledge the participation of all my friends and students and colleagues. And thank the organizers for having provided me an opportunity. So as the Dean, I had to chair, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Dr. Sumana Vedant to submit the vote of thanks.
Good evening to everyone. So we have come to the last phase of the webinar on National Education Policy 2020 and its implication on legal education. And I'm here to propose the vote of thanks. So on behalf of SRM Faculty of Law, we are absolutely grateful to Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, Vice Chancellor, SRM IST, for setting the stage with a positive note on this education policy as a potential transformer. I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the speakers of the webinar, who are experts in legal education, without whom this program would not have been successful. Professor Dr. N.K. Jayakumar, former Vice Chancellor, NUALS, Kochi. Sir, your concerns are well taken, and I wish our students think about it. Professor Dr. T.S.N. Shastri, Vice Chancellor, Tamil Nadu, Ambedkar Law University. Thank you for sharing the comparative analysis made between the legal education system between countries. And Professor Dr. S. Surya Prakash, Vice Chancellor, National Law University, Visakhapatnam. So thank you for sharing the pros and cons of this particular education policy. I take this opportunity to thank our beloved Dean, Professor Dr. C.A. Gurudat, for expressing or for his concluding remarks and also motivating us to conduct this webinar. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank Professor Dr. Dinakar VR for having delivered the welcome address, and our HOD, Dr. Shivkumar, for being a continuous support in all our activities. I would also like to acknowledge the efforts taken by the coordinators of this particular webinar, Mrs. Danya CS, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Law, and Mrs. Indira, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Law, SRM IST. I'd like to
take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of the moderators, the students, and I would also like to express special gratitude to Mr. Raja and his team for the technical support that they have provided today, which is very much in need in today's terms. And we also express a sincere thanks to all the faculty of SRM Law School and also the teaching and the non-teaching staff. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants, the students, the attendees who have been very patient and they have attended this webinar and made it absolutely successful. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of SRM IST, I thank all the participants and our eminent guests for their valuable time and contribution. I am sure this webinar has helped us all to understand more about the education policy. I also request the participants to fill in the feedback form. Wishing everyone a very happy and prosperous Diwali.